There are people who seem to know, without knowing how they know, that their time is shorter than other people's. They don't speak about it directly. They don't make predictions or dwell on it. But something in how they move, the urgency, the intensity, the refusal to treat any day as one that can simply be passed through without being lived, suggests a different relationship with time than most people carry. James Dean lived 24 years. In that time, he made 3 films that defined American cinema for a generation, absorbed the teachings of the greatest acting teachers of his era, drove racing cars at speeds that terrified the people who cared about him, played the guitar late into the night, read philosophy and poetry, and formed friendships of rare depth and honesty with people who remembered him with grief and wonder long after he was gone. He did not move through his days the way someone moves through days who believes they have unlimited ones. He moved through them like someone who had, on some level, already done the math. He talked about time in a way that was unusual for someone his age. Not about death. He didn't dwell on death in a dark or morbid way, but about the texture of the present moment, about the urgency of doing the thing now rather than later, about the cost of postponing something that matters for a version of your circumstances that might never quite arrive. He had a quality that some of the people who knew him described as an inability to go through the motions, a restlessness with any version of a day that was merely adequate rather than fully inhabited. That restlessness cost him some things. Relationships that needed more steadiness than he could offer. A reputation for being difficult for people who wanted predictability and found intensity instead. The ordinary social lubricants, the willingness to be less than fully present in a moment in order to make things easier, he was not always able to manage. When he was in something, he was completely in it. When he was not, it showed. But it also gave him something that most people his age, and many people much older, never had. The ability to live inside a moment as though it were the only one. To be fully present in a conversation, a performance, a friendship, a drive across the California desert at dusk. To treat the hour he was in as though it mattered completely, because, at some level, he believed it did. He believed it completely. And that belief made everything he touched more alive. What did he believe exactly? It wasn't a formal religion, though he had been raised in one and carried traces of it. It was something simpler and harder to name. A conviction that the life you were given was not a rehearsal, that the things you felt most deeply were worth bringing into the world, even imperfectly and incompletely. That the cost of not trying, of holding back, of waiting for safer circumstances, of going through the motions, was higher than the cost of trying and failing. He believed in the value of the present moment in a way that was, for him, almost physical. Not an idea, but a felt sense. A kind of faith in the realness of right now. Maybe you've lost some of that. Maybe there was a time in your life when you moved through your days with more of that quality, when the urgency to live them fully was more present, when the gap between what you felt and what you do expressed was smaller, when the world seemed to require your full attention and you gave it. And maybe, over time, Through years and responsibilities and the accumulated weight of doing what needs doing every day, some of that urgency has faded. Not disappeared, just faded into the background. Replaced by the reasonable, sensible management of a life that has become complex and that requires a certain amount of simply maintaining rather than fully inhabiting. That fading is understandable. It is almost inevitable. A life at full intensity all the time is not sustainable. James Dean burned at that intensity, and it cost him things, and he died young. There is nothing to romanticize in that. But the question, the one his story quietly asks, is whether the fading has gone further than it needed to. Whether some of what has receded was not just the unsustainable intensity, but the genuine presence. The willingness to be fully in the moment you're in. To let what matters actually matter, rather than managing the feeling of it from a distance. To bring yourself, not the managed, maintained, adequately functional version, but the actual you, to the hours of your life. James Dean believed that the present moment deserved all of you. Not just the part that could be managed safely, not the edited version. All of it. And that belief that the hours of your life are worth your full presence is one that doesn't require youth to hold. It requires only the decision to hold it. What would it mean for you to bring a little more of yourself to this day? Not in a dramatic way. Not a complete reinvention of how you move through your hours. Just a little more presence. A little more of actually being in the moment you're in, rather than slightly ahead of it or slightly behind it. A little more of letting what matters actually land. The people who knew James Dean said that being around him was an unusual experience. Not because he was famous, he wasn't in those early years. Not because of the looks or the talent, though both were real. But because he made you feel, when he turned his attention to you, that you were the only person in the room. That what you were saying was the most interesting thing that had been said to him all day. That the conversation you were having was worth his complete attention. And that attention, genuine, unhurried, full, is one of the rarest things one person can offer another. Maybe that is one form the faith takes, in practical terms. The decision to give the people in your life that kind of attention. Not all the time, that is not possible, but in some moments, in the moments that matter. To be fully present with someone you love, or someone who needs you, or someone who is saying something real, and to let your presence be a gift rather than a divided thing. That is something James Dean did well. And it is something that is available to any of us at any age. He died in September 1955 on a highway in California on his way to a race. He was 24 years old. And in 24 years, he had made enough of an impression on enough people to still be talked about, deeply and personally, nearly 70 years later. Not just as a cultural icon, though he is that, but as a person who had been genuinely present in the lives of the people who knew him, who had given them something real in the time he had, something that lasted. You have more time than James Dean had. Almost certainly. Most of us do. And that is a gift, a real one, worth holding and using. The question his story asks is not whether you have enough time. It is what you are doing with the time you have. Whether the belief, the quiet faith that this day, this hour, this conversation matters is still alive in you. And if it has faded, whether you might let it come back a little. So take a slow breath and let the day in front of you be worth your full presence. Not every minute, that is too much to ask, and not how life actually works. But in some minutes, in the ones that count, let yourself be actually there. That is the faith James Dean carried. And it is available to you right now in whatever form your own life makes possible. There is something else his story offers that is worth naming. Something about the particular courage it takes to care visibly, to let what matters to you actually show, rather than protecting yourself by keeping a layer of distance between what you feel and what you express. James Dean was not good at that distance. He cared too obviously, too directly, too completely. His feeling showed. And for some people that was difficult. For others it was one of the most remarkable things about him. Most of us, over time, learn to manage our caring. We develop a layer of protection, a way of engaging with what matters to us that keeps the full force of it slightly at bay. Because caring completely is risky. Because things we care about fully can hurt us fully when they go wrong. And the managed, slightly distanced version of caring is safer and more sustainable and less painful when it doesn't work out. But it is also less alive. And at a certain point in life, when you are looking back at the things you cared about and the ways you expressed that caring, the managed version can feel like a kind of loss. Like you had the feeling and held it at arm's length instead of letting it be fully real. Maybe there is something in your life right now that you are caring about at a slight distance. Something you feel more than you show. Something you believe in more than you say. Something or someone that deserves a little more of your complete, unmanaged, genuine attention. And maybe this is a week to close that distance, even a little. To let what you feel actually show, not in a dramatic way, just in an honest one. That is what James Dean believed in. The realness of what is real, brought forward without too much protection. And that is a faith worth carrying.